Good morning, everyone, and many thanks for joining us as the SDG 7 Pavilion for the Global South. We have a very interesting discussion today about scaling renewable energy adoption in the Global South. And we have an excellent lineup of speakers that I will introduce in a moment. But before going there, let me just give you a bit of a background on why we decided to have this session. So we all know by now that renewable energy is the key driver of the energy transition. But what we also recognize is that while the strong potentials for the energy transition are in the Global South, the technical capabilities and the financial capabilities are still very much concentrated in the Global North. So this wants to have a conversation among different experts from different organizations to kind of discuss how can we strengthen not only the global North and South cooperation, but also South-South cooperation, since a lot of innovative tools and technologies are currently emerging in Global South countries as well. That said, let me please introduce our first speaker that will provide you framework remarks. Is Dr. Shayak Sengupta. He's a fellow for Climate and Energy Program at ORF America. Please join us in the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina, for the introduction. I'd like to give a warm welcome to everyone here and thank our partners for this event, including PepsiCo Foundation, UNOPS, Energy Transition Partnership, and of course, Sustainable Energy for All. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, ORF America is a relatively new think tank based in Washington, D.C., and we focus on policy challenges facing the United States, India, and their partners. So renewable energy will be crucial to not only meeting our climate goals, but delivering energy access and driving economic prosperity in the Global South. No more is this true than in developing regions of Asia, which is home to much of the world's population. Cumulative renewable energy generation has grown tremendously in the region, more than doubling in the last decade, due to in part of declining costs and conducive policies. We can now say that renewable energy delivers more than 20% of the electricity used on the Asian continent. However, we know that this progress must accelerate further to increase renewable energy adoption, thereby meeting both development and climate objectives. Many countries across Asia have tapped a fraction of their potential for solar and wind energy, often due to several constraints, including the lack of finance and technology. While solar is the cheapest source of electricity in many parts of the Global North, this is not necessarily the case in parts of the Global South, and in particular Asia, where borrowing costs to finance projects remains prohibitively high. Moreover, capacity to further research, develop, and innovate for renewable energy technologies also remains concentrated in the North, posing further barriers to those countries in the South looking to increase their share of renewable energy. Fortunately, there are solutions to these challenges, ones that require collaboration across the region, exchanging best practices, and elevating perspectives to deploy clean energy and to decarbonize power grids. Our key theme underlying all of this will be South-South cooperation, as Irina mentioned, whereby countries in the Global South offer their respective toolkits and experiences for joint solutions. This approach has the potential to create solutions that are relevant, translating theory to action to increase renewables. So with that, I look forward to our discussion today. We have a great lineup of speakers and excellent panelists who will bring a unique perspective to both the challenges and opportunities. And I'll hand the podium back to Irina, who will introduce them.
Thank you very much, Sengupta, for your framework remarks. And I would like now to introduce our panelists to the stage. Let me start with our first panelist, Vahel Ismail, who is the Vice President, Corporate Affairs for Africa, Middle East, and South Africa at PepsiCo. Our second panelist is John Cotton. He's a Senior Program Manager for the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership. Our third panelist is Monica Merdekavati. She's the Research Analyst at the ASEAN Center for Energy. Thank you for joining us. And we have with us also Mr. Gangan Dirgantara. He's the head of Environmental, Social and Technical Evaluation Division at PT Sarana Multi-Infrastructure, Indonesia. And last but not least, is with us as well, Liz Warrenby. She's the Asia Pacific Lead Department of Energy Security and Net Zero at the UK government that will join us at the end for some closing remarks. So thank you very much. Does it work first? Yes, perfect. Okay. So first of all, thank you for joining us today. And we are going to have a very interesting discussion. I'm going to start immediately with a question for our first panelist, Vahel, for you. So PepsiCo is a very ambitious company. We know that you have 100% renewable targets by 2030, and you are trying to achieve that in many different ways, and in very successful ways already. You have projects on the ground in many countries, and you are investing also in advocacy. And that's also very important for a company like yours to be a COP, be present, and support for the energy transition. How is PepsiCo focusing on adopting renewable energy in its own operation to make the clean supply chain cleaner?
So we made the commitment that by 2040 we're going to become net zero. But ahead of 2040, we made commitments that we're going to be 100% renewables in many markets across the globe. Already in many markets, probably in the US, Europe, we're already there at 100% renewable energy. I think if you look at the global south, there's a bit more challenges still for us to be there. And that's why we're engaged here at COP as well, and the previous COPs, is to really see how we can unlock access to renewable energy. Here in the Gulf, for example, you've seen a lot of programs announced on renewable energy, solar farms, etc., which is important. But then how us as a manufacturer connects to the grid through power purchase agreements, this is part of the key advocacy that we're trying to really promote here at COP and elsewhere as a key unlock for us to get to that 2040 target, because even in our Scope 3 emissions, actually a bulk of it is sitting still in agriculture. So our Scope 3 is probably about 93 to 95%. So in our Scope 1 and 2, that's something that we can control, easily done. Not easily done, but it's something that we have a line of sight to do it. Unlocking the policy is going to be very important. So I would say scaling PPAs, whatever is possible, is important. And then looking at ways of how we can address the agricultural piece, which I can talk about in a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much. And you touch upon Scope 2, which is a very important topic and one that is debated here at COP, but also one that is debated along a number of companies, because it's going to be revised as well. So thank you for mentioning that as well. And I'm now going to you, John, for a question about the Energy Transition Partnership. And for those of you that are not aware, you can say a bit more as well. The Energy Transition Partnership serve really as a catalyst, right, in the region for renewable energy. And you do so many things, like technical expertise, but also supporting with the right set of financing, the risking, and also technical assistance, which is very important. So maybe, can you tell us a bit more of what the ETPs is doing on the ground, and how do you accelerate the energy transition in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here. Thank you to SE for all. This is really a remarkable pavilion. I think the best I've been in, and save the best till last. So my name is John Cotton. I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Energy Transition Partnership. We bring together governments and philanthropies to support the governments of Southeast Asia with their energy transition. It's critical that we're supporting them with their energy transition. There is no one direct way to decarbonize the energy sector. There's a plethora of choices, and each country needs to leverage its own unique strengths in order to move and embrace the energy transition in the quickest, most economical way possible. So we do this by designing and delivering technical assistance for the governments. We design the technical assistance with our government beneficiaries. We tender it out, and we bring in experts which combine international and local expertise to deliver on specific areas. Today's event is about South-South collaboration, or has a South-South focus. This is something we're learning is hugely important for our beneficiaries. The north-south has a lot of activity, which I won't talk about, but the JETP is maybe at the pinnacle of this, driving north-south collaboration. But the south-south is something that all of our beneficiaries are keen for ETP to play a facilitating role. On the JETP, for example, the two JETP countries of Indonesia and Vietnam were very keen to hear from the South African experience. And as we had a relationship with South Africa from COP, we were very keen to facilitate that dialogue and bring them together and for lessons shared. And when they get together in a room, there's incredibly rich dialogue, actually. South Africa has huge amounts of lessons to share and to be learned. When designing our strategy, we have an advisory panel. Part of this, we ensure that we take our program planning to our advisors. Our advisors are made up mostly of what we'd consider are based in the south, mainly the Southeast Asia region, but also global. And their insights really give a different perspective and help our team understand the different challenges and a different perspective on the challenges from what the more north-based countries are facing. Grid connectivity, I think, is a good example. The grid is probably the biggest impediment to the energy transition. Until we've made sufficient investments in the grid, the energy transition won't happen. But the solutions that have been experienced in the north, first of all, it's really important that we learn from these, that we provide the platforms and opportunities for the grid developers and entrepreneurs to bring their lessons learned. But without an unlimited amount of capital to invest in the problems, without the research and development institutions plugging billions of dollars into it, it's a different challenge that's faced. So the South-South collaboration, in particular on grid, is huge. So we have several specific technical assistants aimed at addressing the challenges and opportunities that South-South collaboration brings. For example, we have the Just Coal Transition Platform. One part of this is twinning both the communities that will be affected by coal phase down, right the way through to policymakers, twinning these, pairing these with other communities globally who are either facing or have faced such. We see this as incredibly valuable for this peer dialogue to take place. We work with the Powering Past Coal Alliance also to twin programs, communities, organizations with like-minded elsewhere in the world. I think Pepsi could be a very interesting one for us, actually. I don't know if Pepsi is a member of the PPCA, but the Powering Past Coal Alliance, through that we have a big program linking leading industries, making statements like Pepsi have with other organizations who could benefit from making such statements and having such ambition and seeing both the business and the climate benefits of making such commitments. And then also on other projects, we're keen to bring in South-based organizations. So we've brought in RELP, for example, from Argentina, who are sharing with the Philippines government the Argentinian experience on redesigning a market for renewables, and some other examples. I'll talk more later if there's time. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and you focus a lot on the importance of sharing best practices among countries from the global south that have been going through the similar coal phase out or coal phase down transition. Very good to hear about the cooperation with South Africa and Southeast Asia. But also very interesting that you mentioned the grid, because the grid is also about collaboration, intra-regional collaboration, especially when it comes to ASEAN. And unless there is a strong grid and strong capability, it will be difficult to trade energy and to have much more renewable on grid, of course, yes. So thank you very much. And I'm going now to our next speaker, Monica. So Monica, you represent the ASEAN Center for Energy that has been working for a number of years on many interesting topics and modeling, as well as research studies, strategies to support intra-regional collaboration among the 10 ASEAN countries. Can you maybe share with us, with the audience, some success stories of your work?
Thank you, Irina, for the opportunity, and thank you for the questions. So if to share our success stories, unfortunately, our success story depend on if the member states really implement it, right? But so far, I would say maybe the most success, the most better one from what is existing is actually the talk or discussion or either effort on the ASEAN Power Grid, which also one of our important partner is UNOPS through the ETP. So as maybe you have known or not, but I will share it anyway. So ASEAN Power Grid has been existing in our work for the past 20 years, but it picked pick up the pace so fast in the past 3 years because of the Singapore pledge of importing 4 gigawatt. It really triggers the discussion and also the progress because there is a market driver there, and how Singapore also, maybe that's lessons learned, that Singapore paradigm on creating more competitive and also encourage more private participation because it drives the competitiveness, right? So that's pretty much the best success story that we have on the ASEAN power grid. But beyond that, actually, maybe to share with you a bit of lessons learned from our past work. For example, the ASEAN interconnection master plan study, which also I believe become the base of the ETP analysis on the ASEAN power grid scheme or work program. Actually, the idea is in the AIMS 3 study, we analyze the existing interconnection and the upcoming interconnection until 2025 and until 2030 and 2040, like in the LTMS connection, and recently BIMP through the Indonesia's leadership to also initiate the interconnection in the BIMP into a greater connection, because so far it's only on between Indonesia, Sarawak. Yeah, I think it's Indonesia, Sarawak only. So that's MC actually has analyzed this and existing and the upcoming, and how the technical potentials of the renewable energy from solar, from offshore wind, from onshore wind, and also hydropower from different ASEAN member states. Each has their like Laos have more hydro, Vietnam has more wind, and how it can help the other member states that needs electricity like Singapore, and how the interconnection can help the optimum adoption of the absorption of the renewable energy into the grid. One of the key findings beside this existing, beside identifying the potential renewable energy resources that are available that can be tapped in readily to the grid, is we need grid improvement, which is maybe one of the work program under the ETP. So yeah, that's pretty much what we have been doing, and we hope the member states, as the indicator of our success, can adopt and also implement it in their national policies and efforts. Maybe I will stop there first. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monica. And a lot of what we are discussing here is about infrastructure project on renewable energy, right? This is the key. There is a lot to be done, and since there is a lot to be done on infrastructure, we will need to have the finance aside for that to be implemented concretely. And now I'm looking at you, Gangan, because obviously you represent an important financial institution in Indonesia, and you are faced with this kind of question every day. You have to see what are the right instruments to be put in place to support this infrastructure project. And so let me ask you, can you give us an overview of what are the most successful instruments that can be put in place to make this infrastructure project a reality?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me here representing SMI. And for those who are not familiar with our company, SMI is a state-owned enterprise in Indonesia, owned 100% by the government through the Ministry of Finance. By law, we are not categorized as a bank, but as a financial institution. So we provide various financial support to local government, to private sector, as well as to other state-owned enterprises. We have various instruments, financial instruments such as a loan, senior loan, junior loan, mezzanine, investment, and also grant and technical assistance. We mobilize funding from various sources by several instruments. First, we have capital from the government. And the second one, we expand our capital with the green bond. We issued the first green bond in 2018, the first in the country. And then just recently, we also issued the sustainable link loan when we invite the commercial banks in the region, in Asia, to contribute to SDG achievement in our country. Other than that, we also established a platform, so-called SDG Indonesia One, and recently we also appointed by the government to be the country platform manager for energy transition mechanism. So we are the manager of ETM country platform in Indonesia, and for that we also support the Just Transition Partnership (JTP) program just launched last year during the G20 meeting in Bali, and for that we try to support because in the JTP investment plan. There are four focus areas, investment focus areas, they're indicated in the document. First, to support the transmission and distribution. And the second one is to increase the dispatchable renewable energy to replace the coal as the sources of energy and as a base load energy. The third one is to increase the variable renewable energy, such as the solar panel, wind power, etc. And the last one is to materialize the early retirement of coal-fired power plant. So there are four areas of investment that we try to support. And the JTP, I think they also try to set up another focus areas, is including regarding the supply chain of renewable energy, which is very, very important to boost the renewable energy development in our country. Since we have the platform, so we can set up or develop various financing mechanisms, innovative financing mechanism that involve several instruments. For example, we can combine the investment with commercial loan and also with the grant for technical assistance. We have one project in geothermal in the eastern part of Java Island, where we combine concessional loan from one development agency with our commercial loan, and also supported by technical assistance from GGI as a think tank. The second example is we also can provide investment grant. So for the projects that are not bankable, we try to find solution how to make it materialize. And for that, in one example is for a renewable energy project, small renewable energy, since we have portfolio starting from 1 million USD to more than 100 million USD. So for this, the small project, we apply the investment grant from the UK government, from monetary projects. So with that support, so we can then provide financing to this. So I think the blended finance, the so-called blended finance, is very important to allow the not bankable project to be materialized in Indonesia. And because we know that renewable energy projects until this moment, the sponsor can be categorized as medium, small. Just recently, the big company are interested to also join in renewable energy development in our country. I think I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gangan. Very sophisticated instruments of blended finance that demonstrates the willingness of the government of Indonesia to work with all different partners to make this project happen on the ground. So we discussed about infrastructure finance, we discussed about research and knowledge, about implementation of strategy on the ground. So I'm going back to you, Vahel. The region, at least in Southeast Asia, but also Global South and South-South cooperation with South Africa and beyond, are really trying to enact a number of policies. But according to you and to your experience in PepsiCo, what kind of other policies will be needed to be put in place to really scale up renewable energy in the Global South?
No, I think I think at the beginning of COP, our team, so Jim Andrew, our Chief Sustainability Officer, also had a connect with the Vietnamese Prime Minister, specifically on this issue of trying to promote PPAs and 100% renewable in Southeast Asia. But if you look at the Global South in general, I think PPAs are not fully enabled across the board, partly because there are economic systems in place that are, the utility suppliers are either state government owned, it's a revenue to the government, connectivity of the grid is still restricted, even if you have, so let's say if you have a manufacturing site, on-site solar is not going to get you to 100%. So you need larger pieces of land, and in certain areas where manufacturing sites have already been set up, finding that space of land is very difficult. So it ranges from sometimes policy structures, I think economic structures, but sometimes just practicality of the locations that we are in. There are a lot of industrial sites that went up without taking into account this entire climate change agenda in mind. And I think this is very important because even in areas where you have, for example, power purchase agreements or wheeling agreed, like India or South Africa, for example, it's still a state by state, municipality by municipality engagement. Certain municipalities don't want to lose that control, etc. So that becomes, it's, even if you get it on the national level, you still need to get it there. So having a one policy framework is important. Two, understanding the specifics of each locality is also important. But three, also ensuring that the government, when they start making these commitments of tripling renewables, doing these types of things, is that they look at industrial sector manufacturing, how much it contributes, and how they can really scale that effort at first. Now we have solar farms being sprung up almost everywhere without having a connectivity of how this is going to really help us. Because in most cases, you have the solar farms running, nobody's taking those, it's being stored or even sometimes exported, and the country is still running on fossil fuels or coal or whatever it is. So something is not adding up from that perspective.
Thank you very much. Very important, I think, to look not only at the national level, but at the end of the day, these projects are at local level. So you need also an enabling environment at local level. And to have that, you need to have everybody on board. And also you need a very interesting and complete regulatory framework for the developers as well. And I believe that what you mentioned about the PPA is very important. Hopefully in the future, with more clarity, also with the local legislation, this could be definitely unlocked. And I'm going back to you now because we discussed a lot about PPAs, but also renewable energy project. And one element that is recurring is the risk. Many developers, they don't want to go in a sector because it's very risky. So I'm sure that PTSMI is doing a lot to the risk, but also your energy transition partnership is supporting in that. What do you think can be a successful model to the risk and to help developer invest as much as possible in solar PV, but also in other areas of renewable energy?
Yeah, good question. Do we have a few hours? It's a huge challenge. So maybe firstly, just to acknowledge the work PTSMI are doing. If or when PTSMI come out of the journey they're currently on, they will be international heroes. They're embarking on something incredibly challenging. So first, maybe congratulations to the government of Indonesia for making the commitments and then assigning the resources to pursue this journey with the ETM as just one of the things they're leading on. But if we're talking south-south or even south-north, the lessons that we'll have from PTSMI's journey will be huge. And I'll also extend that also to ACE and ASEAN Centre of Energy. The job that you have is incredibly difficult. To bring the 10 ASEAN member states together in coherency to drive a low-carbon future is very, very challenging. I don't envy the role you play. I'm happy to sit behind in our organization to support. But drivers such as Singapore making the 4 gigawatt announcement and other drivers are making it much easier to move forward. The private sector as well, organizations like Pepsi are coming in and yielding the power that they have to support and show the direction that can be led is super, super critical. So in terms of unlocking finance, there isn't a key to unlock finance, unfortunately. We often get put into meetings where we're asked to provide shovel-ready renewable energy, green investment projects, and it's simply not that easy. To create a stranded project, maybe talk about like a solar farm, the techno-economic feasibility is relatively easy to do, but the techno-economic feasibility is when the private sector can come in and then look at the techno-economic feasibility and cross-reference different projects and move forward with it. But before that, we need the political, social, and environmental aspects all to be addressed and coherent. And that's the role of a multitude of stakeholders ranging from the policymakers through to financial institutions. And this is where we're at now with the energy transition. The landscape is changing from country by country different, but a heavily coal-dominated scenario in Indonesia where the entire financial institution and everything behind it is in place to support this type of energy system, to something completely new. So the policy framework the policy, regulatory and legal frameworks are simply not in place to allow for distributed renewable energy scenario. Some examples of work that we're doing, which maybe not so obvious, but we're working, for example, with the Department of Energy in the Philippines to redesign the grid code so that the grid code can incorporate new variable renewable energies and various storage systems for the grid. It doesn't exist, so you can't have a shovel-ready project if there's no mechanism in the grid code to allow for the private sector developers to understand how to connect to the grid. Same with the market mechanisms. The market mechanisms don't exist for battery energy storage, for example, to contribute, to be reimbursed. So this policy regulatory landscape is huge. Without that, there won't be shovel-ready projects. So there needs to be some patience in order to get through these steps. Then in terms of like unlocking the finance itself, if we look at the projects themselves, the tools and access to finance, the taxonomy doesn't yet exist. Nobody wants to own a coal plant now. We've succeeded in driving the financial institutions to be averse to coal. Nobody wants to own, but the problem with that, somebody needs to own a coal plant in order to close it down. So the taxonomy doesn't exist in order that green investments can come in to acquire a coal plant and then close it down 10, 15 years early. A big headache I'm certain you're dealing with. We have investment capital ready to come in, but they won't touch a coal plant. Very interesting to support the just side, support the repurposing side to bring in the renewable energies to it, but someone has to have that asset on their books. And we need a paradigm shift, a taxonomy that would allow that to happen. And then third, I spoke already about the grids. But in order to get that techno-economic feasibility, then there's also the grid work that needs doing so that the solar projects don't become curtailed. Vietnam has a great success story of bringing in a market mechanism, not a PPA, but the FIT, which saw the world's fastest growing solar market in the world between 2019 and 2021. I think they brought on 17 gigawatts of solar, but then the grid wasn't ready, so then we saw curtailment. So it puts renewables back several years because they have to take steps back and reevaluate the whole scenario. So we're working on some projects that seem very modest, but for example, we have a project with the government of Indonesia for 1 gigawatt of solar. But the idea is to take the journey from where we are now to 1 gigawatt and start addressing all the impediments when they come up. And there are a lot. And we would love to solve these in a matter of days, weeks, and months. But some of them are really embedded in the institutional, legal, regulatory organizations of the country that requires presidential sign-off to change it. So this isn't going to be quick, but what's really important is we head in this direction. And just my final point on this, the biggest driver, I think, Singapore announcing 4 gigawatt, this commitment is a huge driver. The government of Vietnam announcing net zero 2050 at COP26 just aligns all ministries in the same direction. The government of Indonesia announcing JETP, it gives the market signals that, okay, here's Indonesia, all of the offshore wind developers are now queuing up in Manila to get their hands on the offshore wind projects because the World Bank's 10-step roadmap for offshore wind, the Department of Energy are driving, is bringing all the people to the right place to drive it forward. So I can't remember what the question was, but if the question was what's the biggest driver to bringing renewable energy to the region, it's a government commitment, firm commitment to put it front and foremost so that everyone can align behind it and start pushing in the same direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Very good overview. And definitely you mentioned about 1 gigawatt of solar that is small, but it's not small. It's huge, actually. We, in our investigation, showed that with 1 gigawatt of solar production, that is about $50 million investment, you can have a return of 35 million US dollars in GDP growth, 8,000 jobs, and 18 million tons of CO2 abatement during the course of the project. So it's quite big, it's quite relevant. And since we're discussing about solar, but also John touched upon coal, which I think it's the big elephant in the room. No one wants to discuss about coal and on the importance of the people working on that sector to stay in the sector because they have to really actively phase out and support entire communities in doing that. What I wanted to discuss with you, Monica, so we discussed in the previous panel as well about the importance of coal subsidies and how much coal subsidies are in the region. We are talking about 120 billion of subsidies in the ASEAN region. So that's quite a lot of money that could be redirected somewhere else. So do you think that by regional cooperation through ASEAN countries, that could happen? And what are some key drivers that can allow that among the 10 different countries?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Indeed, maybe you point already arise what's the main problem with the member states of ASEAN. We still pretty much consider highly coal a role in our energy mix because of the concern of the energy affordability, accessibility, and also affordability predominantly. And talking about if regional cooperation can help the member states as a region drives together to phase out coal and also do the subsidy reform. The possibility is there, but again, with the regional discussion, the main challenge is how to entice all these member states to be in the same page, and then to understand that this regional discussion actually will benefit their own countries. So for example, like maybe you are also aware, John, like in the discussion of the ASEAN power grid, like for example, the LTMS, when we want to improve the grid, we need to put the money, right? And the country want to ensure the money they spend also return the same benefit, or benefit to their own country, not like to other country. So that's pretty much the basic challenge or premise that we try to resolve by aligning the discussion that you discuss here with other countries at the regional level actually can benefit your countries by sharing the numbers and the study like what you mentioned before, that actually the benefit maybe not now but maybe later. Like for example, the possible GDP growth and also the economic creation from all the renewable energy subsidies directed to the creation of the new renewable energy projects and also phasing out coal. So that's the efforts that we are trying to scale up and also intensify by working with different partners like ETP and also other partners like the global south, like China. China is global south, right? Yeah, China. I don't know if Japan and South Korea, is it the global south too?
You should ask them.
Anyway, yeah, we work with the different dialogue partners and also like maybe I believe Brazil is like global south, right? Also Brazil to also give the share the lessons learned that they have in scaling up their bioenergy supply chain. For example, it's like the talk beyond the ASEAN power grid that we pretty much talking about. So yeah, back to the question, regional cooperation definitely can help the member states to move forward in a more coherent way into the right direction. But it takes time. It takes a lot of help from partner and also from the think tank like C4All and also IRENA and etc. That we need to present all these findings to the government and make them confident that they are moving to the right way. So I think that's pretty much what I can share. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And since we are discussing about regional cooperation and multi-stakeholder approach, and Kangan, you also discussed before how many different partners you are working with to have the right instruments in place for the projects. How do you find that journey across the 10 ASEAN countries? Is it an easy journey? How do you think it's important to have a multi-stakeholder approach, not only within Indonesia, but also within the rest of the 10 ASEAN countries and maybe similar financial institutions like yours?
Okay, multi-stakeholder approach. I think it is very, very important for our operation. First, it can allow us to provide various financial scheme. that I mentioned earlier. However, since our company has three business pillars: first, advisory, and then project preparation and financing. We have experience in preparing project. I'm talking about the geothermal in the beginning as one option to replace the coal as the base load energy. Preparing the geothermal project is not easy. Yeah, it's very complicated, and we apply in our risk management, in our business process, we apply five due diligence aspects. First, technical issue, then legal issue, financial issue, environmental and social. We have experience that in preparing geothermal project, we secure all funding. We have a very, very sophisticated financial instruments. But when we conducted the project implementation on the ground, the people at the local society rejected the project. So until now, after 5 years preparation, the project haven't been executed. Yeah? So I think various multi-stakeholders approach here, we have to indicate all level of stakeholders, international, national, as well as local stakeholders, including local society. So it will allow us to prepare the project first, so secure all the project preparation element, and then after that we can secure the funding with the cooperation with multinational development bank, international commercial banks, and also philanthropy. And we work at national level to set up a national framework in energy, and then to cooperate with our ministry to really execute the project on the ground. So it is very, very important approach that we need to establish. However, we also experience that those kind of stakeholders have their own KPI, their own interest. Yeah? So it's not easy to really work under a multi-stakeholder approach. So I think the institution like UNOPS and many other institutions like that can try to facilitate or become the mediator how to set up an ideal model to really create a multi-stakeholder approach that support the renewable energy on the ground. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. So definitely it's not an easy process, but it's a necessary process. We have to be very clear. It should take a long time because it's a participatory process. So you need all the different actors around the table. But as you said, unless you have this process in place and you are transparent, you share everything with everyone, then the project doesn't really happen on the ground. So it's, as we said, a difficult one, but a necessary one. It will take some time, but then it saves time when the project is to be implemented. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think we still have some time left. Yeah. So I would like to open the floor. And oh, that's good. I see already 2 hands raised. So yes, we can give you the microphone. Please stand up and identify yourself. Thank you so much. I think we had the gentleman behind first. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Dan Delury with the Long Duration Energy Storage Council, which is a new international trade association focused on, as you would guess, long-duration energy storage, which means you're going beyond conventional batteries. You're talking about multiple hours, days, weeks, perhaps even longer, depending on the technology. So I was glad to hear a couple of you mention storage, but my question is storage being addressed or included in any of your work or any of your countries, aside from just a conceptual placeholder that, yes, of course we should have storage, but is there something beyond that, for instance, a storage target or anything else that would provide traction for storage, which further provides traction for renewables?
Thank you very much for the question. I mean, in terms of targets, there is aspirational target of up to 150 gigawatt hour in the Southeast Asia region. But let me give the floor to you, John. You want to take it? Good.
Long duration energy storage. I wish I had some of that for myself during COP. Mine's definitely been short duration. To answer your question, yes, absolutely. It's very critical to the planning of all three countries where we work: Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. In Vietnam, storage is embedded in a PDP-8, and we're working with the government now on standards, so that standards for battery energy storage, so that the materials can either be developed nationally or imported. Without the standards in existence, there's no import-export of the goods. So it's high priority in Vietnam. I know AFD, for example, is supporting the government of Vietnam looking at a battery energy storage project, which will lead to the first proof of concept there. In Philippines, we are working with the government on pumped storage hydro roadmap. So understanding, I mean, this is pumped storage hydro, but the work extends into all types of storage. It's understanding where the grid would require the storage and what type of storage would be needed. We're looking at it through the lens of pumped storage hydro because it's the most economically viable in the Philippines context as of now that we understand. Maybe I shouldn't speak on Indonesia because there's people more knowledgeable than myself, but I do also know that Indonesia sees itself as playing a critical role both nationally and regionally with battery energy storage, given the supply chains, access to critical minerals, and manufacturing opportunities that exist within Indonesia. So I would say it's very high on the agenda across all three countries where I work. But maybe you would like to expand on that? No? Okay. Thank you.
The only thing I would like to add, since you mentioned battery so many times, is we're not talking about lithium-ion batteries. There are several. There are thermal batteries. There are electrochemical batteries, and if you just go to our website, I think you'll find out some things that you probably didn't know existed. Thanks.
What's your website? Now's the chance.
It's the Long Duration Energy Storage Council, LDES Council. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure to share the website with all the participants today. And LDES is also one member of the 24/7 Carbon-Free Energy Compact. So I think it will be a good point to have also a workshop and maybe go a bit into the details of that. Many thanks. And now for the second question for the gentleman here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Khalil Najjar, Director of Economy and Climate at Mercy Corps, Jordan. Thank you for mentioning the grid issue. I have two questions on that because even though Jordan is relatively one of the highest countries when it comes to penetration rate for renewables and electricity generation, it's now around 27%, which is impressive, but the grid is the cap. Actually, when we proposed to our national electric power company a socio-economic wheeling solution, they literally told us, sorry, we can't, the grid is at it caps when it comes to additional solar farms. You can help us fund storage solutions, which is fine, but for us, I mean, in order at one point to go back and increase renewables, we need to fix and work on issues on the grid. But as you said, I mean, it requires billions of research even to propose solutions. So what would be your advice on transferring and localizing technologies and solutions for grid? Because I'm sure some of the issues are common already, but also knowing that some policies allow for a monopoly on access to the grid and control over the grid. How can we support entrepreneurs? Because you talked about grid entrepreneurs. How can we support entrepreneurs to also collaborate with governmental authorities to propose further grid solutions? Thank you.
When it goes to the audience, you kind of pray that the questions don't come to you because you're not prepared. That's two at me, so please pick on somebody else. Was your question about the Philippines? The audio is really bad here. In general. Okay, so the transfer solutions. Some of the world's leading grid companies who have addressed these challenges already don't, or they have very little resources set up to export this knowledge overseas. And it's actually for them countries or them grid companies, there's a huge opportunity. And I keep reaching out to them because I want to bring that knowledge from them countries to the regions I work. But they have 2 or 3 people more on a diplomatic type approach to sharing. So knowledge sessions and joining in workshops, it's set up, but for actual export of the technology and the depth that they've gone through, it's just not as up for it. So I know, for example, GPST is an organization funded by multiple organizations, are growing in the region. And they're bringing grid operators globally to support this. I can put you in touch with people from GPST who have some resources to share. The National Grid in the UK, they have great stories, but not the institutional setup to send a number of people I would like sent over to support with the various utilities. To support the entrepreneurship, it's really critical that some policy suite exists or some funding mechanism exists to drive that entrepreneurship. So I know from the UK they had good examples where they put challenges up for tender without solutions. So they talked about the need for frequency stabilization within the grid, for example. And this drove a huge amount of entrepreneurship. Someone's repurposing old coal plants or old gas plants to get the frequency. Others was coming up with completely new situations that had happened. But they had a huge amount of money behind them to do this. So this is, I think I started at the beginning of the day, that without that huge amounts of capital to put on the table to drive, it's very challenging. With the Philippine Smart Grid Roadmap we're looking at, the consultant continually emphasizes the point that there isn't really such a thing as a smart grid. There's no out-of-the-box smart grid solution. Rather, there's a policy suite that can be implemented which allows us to address specific smart grid needs on a case-by-case scenario. And for that, it needs entrepreneurship. So the government can support by putting funding and into the educational system to allow for the creativity and entrepreneurship to address such, but really this is multi-country, and we need to create stronger networks globally to bring the likes of GPST, the National Grid, the Australian network, which has gone through a lot, together, and I think there's huge amounts of space for growth in this area.
Just to add, so maybe to just add the context of the ASEAN countries. So from the 10 ASEAN countries, only 2 that really relevant maybe to your questions, where the market, the electricity market is already deregulated and allowing the private participation to participate in the market system, like contributing to the distribution and also on the spot market, something like that. And Philippines and Singapore is one of the case where it is relevant, and a lot of innovation, I believe, already growing there, because it's the market situation allow them to grow and also to find solution to be more competitive. And maybe my next point is, in terms of renewable energy, I believe we should consider, like for Indonesia too, so to deregulate the market and allow more private participation. So with that, actually the cost advantage of renewable energy, which already economically feasible, can be more prominent than the fossil fuel. But if it's still like what we have so far, sorry, like for Indonesia and the rest of the member countries, where subsidy is pretty much helping the public utilities, which pretty much monopoly, it doesn't reflect the actual cost. So we can't really think much about the innovation because the need is not there yet. So just to add you the context, maybe, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica and John. Very, very valid points on the lack of level playing field from electricity produced from renewables and subsidized electricity, of course, and also that finance that should be unlocked at some point. Yeah, but also the knowledge gap that you mentioned, especially when it comes to the grid, because if then people are formed to be aware of how to make the grid smart, to the right educational program, that could help also a bit more in the long term, not right now, but that also is very important, the capacity building aspect of that. Let me check the time. I think we still have time for one more question. Yes? Please identify yourself.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Wangashi-Shege, Sustainable Energy for All. That's why it's funny. Thank you for this fantastic panel. A good question that came out, and a lot of my work is global and also Africa-wide. There's a mention of preparing all the projects, having the funding, but then the community refusing or pushing back on those projects. I'd like to hear more about why that's the case, because it's very similar in some areas in Africa as well. And we've, as SE for All, we've started this Africa Energy Dialogues with other partners, and also marketplace investment workshops that run quarterly through the year in Nairobi, Accra, and Lagos, Nigeria, to bring the community of practice together. But I'd like to hear more from you. Thank you.
Okay. Project selection and project due diligence, I think each financial institution has its own standard, its own framework. So some of them will directly reject the project. Depend on, I think the reason will be varies, starting from the know your customer first. So if we are dealing with the uncredible customer, so we will start from very beginning, we will reject the project. And then financial issue. If the project is financially feasible, so most likely it will go to the next step of the process, of the financing process. And after that, we conduct the other due diligence, technical, environmental, and social. Once the project is not financially bankable, we are not directly reject the project, since we have, in SMI case, we have quite a lot of various support, technical assistance, grant, and also we can also provide concessional loan. We can provide a long-term financing. I think the longest one is around 20 years for one toll road in Indonesia. So, and we try to combine all sources to help the project. That's the first principle. So how we can endorse and we can support the project in order to be bankable. So we can provide them with the financing. So SMI will also work with other banks. So we finance a project using syndication or club deal, and also we establish a special program for that. With the World Bank, we have Regional Infrastructure Development Fund, for example. With also the World Bank, we established one facility for geothermal exploration activity. With the IFD, we established the special scheme for renewable energy financing. So I think if we, one financial institution, cooperate with the multi-stakeholders, so we have quite a lot of options in order to try find solution for that kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you don't give up. You try every possible solution to really support the project. That's very positive. Thank you so much. And I think with this, I would like to call on stage, on the podium, Liz Wormby, the Asia Pacific lead for the Energy Security Department of the UK government, for some key insights and closing remarks. Many thanks, Liz. Over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I think I only have a few minutes, but I'd just like to say thank you so much to the panel here. And it's really great to see private sector and think tanks, and then myself as national government all come together to discuss this really important topic. And I guess zooming back a little bit outwards, why is this so important? Well, the International Energy Agency and IRENA estimate that the global clean energy transition from coal to clean energies needs to progress about 4 to 6 times faster than the pace we're currently on in order to meet our 1.5 degree Paris goals. So this kind of key action and urgent action is really key. And thinking about, well, why does this matter to us all? I was just reflecting on this morning. I think if not already, imminently, 2023 is going to become the hottest year on record. So we really do need to accelerate the global energy transition. And I was really pleased to hear that this multi stakeholder approach has been touted as so important by our panelists in moving forward together, because we have local projects, national governments like myself and the policymakers here, but also the private sector and how that affects businesses, and the financial mechanisms is really key that we're all together. So really pleased to have everyone here today. And also, this is a really great opportunity, I think, the clean energy transition. There are challenges, which some of the panelists have been discussing, but it's actually a really great opportunity to try and reach the SDG 7 goal of energy access for all that is clean, for the climate, but also for development. So I just see it as a really exciting opportunity as well as the challenges. Just to briefly touch on some of the UK multilateral initiatives that we lead, and I think some of that will cut across some of the points the panelists were making. So we lead quite a few multilateral initiatives in this space. So firstly, we co-chair the Energy Transition Council with the Philippines. We had just earlier in week 1 of COP, ministerial dialogue, and the key part of the council is to have that high trust dialogue between the council's donor countries, so global north countries, but also our ETC, Energy Transition Council partners. From the global south, we have 11 countries there to make sure those financial and technical support is there, and we can connect that up rapidly so there's no delay. Secondly, I'm really glad to see John on the panel, because we're a donor to the ETP, so it's great to hear all the work that they're doing on the ground. And we need that technical assistance to actually realize these goals. And the grid has come up, I think, in every panelist as a key issue that, there is no transition without transmission. That's our key kind of tagline, which I quite like to use. So the UK leads the Green Grids initiative. So the idea is, how do we unblock that bottleneck in the grid, and how do we build, particularly in the global south, grid infrastructure rapidly? So at COP28, we launched the Electricity Transition Playbook. So that's a kind of case studies platform. So John mentioned the National Grid, which is the UK's energy system operator, lessons learned, but also from other countries, including that really key global south-south cooperation as well, and a principles for interconnectors. So thinking about the Singapore 4 gigawatt target, how do you realize an interconnector project from start to finish? So we launched those this week. And then lastly, we also lead work on how do we get countries to commit, and businesses, local governments to commit to phase out coal. So the JETPs were mentioned quite a few times. Of course, the UK is a big donor for that, and great to have your support as well on all of that, and delivering and the financing too, and that blended finance model. But we also co-lead the Powering Past Coal Alliance, which John mentioned, with Canada. And there's a lot of momentum there for countries to commit to phasing out coal and building no new coal as well. That is really important. We just cannot have new coal on the grid if we want to meet our Paris goals, really. And we've had countries this week, just Morocco joined us, I think 2 days ago, in the Powering Past Coal Alliance, along with the US earlier in the week, the UAE host presidency, and also we have businesses. So if PepsiCo is interested, very happy to talk to you about that afterwards. So just to conclude, really great to hear this discussion. Would love to pick up with the panelists and anyone in the audience who's interested. But thinking about where we are, we're at COP28 right now. The global stocktake discussions are getting into the business end. And from our perspective in the UK, we really want to see a clean energy package in that global stocktake that keeps 1.5 alive. It phases out unabated fossil fuels. We end no new coal, phase out coal power, triples renewable energy, and doubles energy efficiency, and really key point that it supports a just transition that doesn't leave anyone behind. So that's what we'd like to see from the COP28 global stocktake. And I think it's my job to wrap up the discussion here. Thank you so much for all the really interesting questions, and from the panelists, would love to chew your ear off about all these things. But thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to Irina and SE for all for hosting us today at the SDG 7 Global South Pavilion. Thank you very much.